this full tutorial we will have a look how we can create a 3D game. As you can see, we can pass through blocks, we can move in the forward direction. Okay, so and if you want to make the menu, those kind of things like audio menu, I will have a link in the description of a video. You can go ahead and check that out. Okay, and also timestamp will be in the description, so you can just go in the description. If you are looking for an specific part, then you can do that. Okay, and we can make high score as well. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this complete tutorial. Okay, so let's get into that. As you can see, I have opened up an empty 3D project. Okay, we have our main camera in scene view basically the stage where we have to drag all of the things that plays our game. Okay, and the game will be broadcast in our game view right over here. Okay, and we can drag, you can say this is a stage where we need to get all of the things. Okay, or else in hierarchy in the bottom we can see you might have your hierarchy in the left side. Okay, but you can toggle it down any tab anywhere you want. Something like this animation tab, I can toggle it down anywhere in our Unity editor. So I'm gonna drag it in the bottom, and let's suppose you just lost any tab. Just don't panic. So what you need to do, you need to go to window in the top and scroll to the bottom side, says general, and you can find the tab you recently lost, any of them. Okay, and the shortcut key for that you can see in the right section. Okay, so let's suppose I'm gonna close this tab, right click, and if I close this, and as you can see I lost the animation tab. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to window in the top, window, and scroll to the bottom, says animation, or the shortcut key for is control 6. As you can see, it's immediately get up. Okay, we immediately got it, so I'm gonna drag it bottom where it was, and let's suppose I close this console tab. Okay, if I close this tab, as you can see I also lost my console tab. Okay, so what we need to do, we need to go to window, and now I'm gonna find the console tab in general. Okay, so let's go to general, and I just recently lost the console one, and the shortcut key for in the right side, control shift plus C. Okay, so click on that, and as you can see instantly we got it. So I'm going to drag it right over here. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. And to play the game, we need to hit this play button in the top. You can see 3 buttons in the top. First one, the play button, second one is pause, and the all the way right one is skipping. Okay, so if I hit this play button, we cannot do anything. Basically, we in our game have nothing to do or anything like that. As you can see, our game is totally blank. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a game object. So what is a game object? So basically this main camera and this light source also an game object. Game object basically a game object which exists in 3D place. Okay, let me show that to you. To create a game object, you need to move over to hierarchy or hit this plus icon. So I'm gonna go to hierarchy, right click, and go to create empty game object. Okay, so this is our game object, and as you can see this game object have y-axis, x-axis, and the z-axis. Okay, and if you hold down all and try to move your mouse, you can look around in the scene view. Okay, and the problem is that we cannot able to see this game object. It just exists in 3D place which have x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. Okay, so to able to see, we need to add a mesh renderer. Okay, so basically we need to attach some components to do specific things. So in our case, we just want to see this game object. So in order to see, we need to add mesh renderer. Okay, so select the game object, go over to inspector in the right. You can inspect all of the things in the inspector tab. Okay, like position, rotation, and scale, or any component. Okay, so attach a component, we need to click on add component, and we can find that by typing the name of the component. So in our case, this mesh renderer. Okay, and we can choose a material. Okay, we need to choose a material to get to see. Okay, to choose, so let's click on this and let's choose a default one. Okay, so we not able to see this game object yet, so let me show that to you. So I'm gonna delete. To delete, just delete, press down delete, and I'm gonna create a 3D cube. Okay, so let's go to hierarchy, right click, then go to 3D object and then cube. Okay, so if we select this game object cube, as you can see, this game object has cube mesh filter and also this mesh renderer, which you can say we are able to see our game object. Okay, and we also need to attach this cube mesh filter, and we can choose any mesh we want, something like I can choose capsule, I can choose cylinder, I can choose a sphere. So I'm gonna choose cube. Okay, so we need both of this component. Okay, for this mesh renderer we can choose color as well, we can drag any color we want. Okay, so as you can see, this game object have a cube component, cube mesh filter, as well as mesh renderer, as well as box collider. Okay, so this box collider right over here is for collision detection. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, if I remove this cube mesh filter, remove component, as you can see, the mesh is responsible for the you can geometry of the game object. Okay, but we cannot able to see, we just have box collider. So basically the geometry mesh renderer right over here is responsible for geometry of our game object, and to able to see, we need to attach a component, it's called a mesh filter. Okay, as you seen, so let's add that mesh filter. Okay, mesh filter, let's add that up, and we can choose a mesh. Okay, it says non mesh, and we can choose something like cube, cylinder, like that. So I'm gonna choose the cube one. Okay, as you can see, we get that up, and we can drag it down, drag it right, left, by selecting this move tool right over here, and we can select this rotate tool to rotate our game object like this, and we can select the scale tool, we can scale it in the x axis, in the y axis as well, and in the z axis as well. And we have this rect tool right over here, and we can choose like this. Okay, and we have rotation tool as well as this box collider. Okay, so this is our game object. Now we cannot able to see this game object in our main camera. So basically main camera is down. Okay, so that's why we're gonna select this game object. So select the cube game object, select this move tool, and we're gonna drag it down. Before we do that, I'm gonna reset the all of the position. To reset in the 000 something like that, we need to go over to inspector, then transform, right click on transform and reset it. Okay, now as you can see, we are able to see. Okay, and we can select this main camera, we can drag it drag it right over here to see, as you can see. And what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna call this game object to something like player. So I'm gonna drag it a little bit up, let's call it player. Okay, in order to rename this, right click on it, right click on it, rename, or what else you can do, you can select this game object, go over to inspector, and you can rename right over here. So let's call it something like player. Okay, and now if we hit this play button, the game will be play right over here in game scene. Okay, but in the game we doing nothing at all. As you can see, this is not exactly a game, something like that. So let's suppose we want to add gravity to this game object. Okay, so in order to add gravity to this game object, we need to attach another component, it's called rigid body. So firstly select the player game object, go over to inspector and click on this red add component, and we need to find a rigid body. Okay, rigid body, and then as you can see, we can scale up the mass, so this game object will fall down twice. Okay, so and we can constrain, we have this collision detection too, we need to choose continuous. Okay, so it will continuously detect any collision. Oh, okay. So now if I hit this play button, you're gonna able to see this game object will fall down due to our gravity. We added up rigid body, and this rigid body is responsible for adding of gravity. So as you can see, it's going down, down, and down, basically for this gravity. Okay, and you can see the axis right over here. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of it. And we have right over here project tab. Okay, in project tab we need to drag all of the things that we going to use in our game, something like images, icons, buttons, anything like that. Okay, sprites, basically sprite assets, audio file, like those. We need to drag it in project tab, and we have to go to these assets, and we also can create folders to make or to get all of the things in organized way. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna drag it a little bit down, a little bit up. Let's suppose you want to change the color. Okay, so in order to change the color, what we need to attach material. Okay, material, and that material is responsible for changing color and all of metallic things. Okay, so in order to create material, what you need to go to project tab, then asset, right click on assets, then create, and you can see their material. So click on it and name the material what you want. So I'm gonna call it something like player. Okay, or player color, or player, something like that. So click on this material and go over to inspector, and you can choose albedo, so color of the material. So I'm gonna choose something like red. Let's suppose red or yellow. Let's choose this yellow. And now let's select this player game object, and let's move over to mesh renderer. As you can see material, and it says default material. So what we have to do, we need to select this material from that project tab, project, or that assets folder, and we just have to drag it in here. So as you can see, it's directly turned out yellow, and we can choose the color in runtime. So we can just go select that material in project tab, and we can change the color any color we want. Okay, so I'm gonna choose something like this, or black. It's totally up to you what color you want. Okay, so I'm gonna go to with something like red. Okay, so red seems fine. Okay, and let's create folder to make it a separate. Okay, to keep all of the things in organized way. To create a folder, go to project tab, then asset, right click on assets, then create folder, and name the folder what you want. So I'm gonna call it something like let's call this one folder to materials. Okay, let's call it materials, materials, sorry, materials. And let's select this player material. Okay, and let's drag it right there. Okay, as you can see, now it's organized. We have material folder, and by default we have scenes folder. Basically the scene, or you can see the level, and the level of this, and the name of the level of this is sample scene. And you can rename whatever, just right clicking on that sample scene, and you can rename this, or by clicking on rename. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna create a ground, so this player game object can fall down to that ground. Okay, to create a ground, let's go to hierarchy, right click, then go to 3D object, then cube. Let's choose this cube, and let's drag it down something like, and let's move it over here. And what we want, we just want to scale in the x-axis, so it will be flat. So let's select this cube. Firstly, let's rename this cube to something like ground. So right click on it, let's rename this to ground. Okay, ground. And we want to scale in the x-axis, so let's do in the x something like 3, or let's do 5 instead. Okay, so 5 seems pretty small. Let's do it instead 8. So it seems pretty quite good, and you can hold down also, you can move around in the game view. And if you select any game object, and you can press down F to focus on it, and okay, and you can scroll your mouse to zoom in and out. So I'm gonna zoom out and hold down alt, you can see. So I'm gonna So if I select this ground, so in the z-axis, so this is our z-axis, the up one is y-axis and the side one is x-axis. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stretch in the z-axis, so this player game object can land on and go into that ground, basically just go forward direction, in the direction of our ground. We just gonna stretch. So I'm gonna select this ground. Let's go over to transform and let's go to scale component, and in the z I'm gonna choose something like 100. Okay, so as you can see, indeed it's stretch in 100. So let's move it something over here. Let's select this move tool and let's move it over here, something like that. Okay, and let's suppose you want to, and by default this component added up a box collider 2D, okay, for collision detection. And if we remove this box collider, if I right click and remove this component, okay, and if I select this player game object and move it something like over here, and let's hit this play button, this player game object will just gonna pass through this ground. Why? Because we just remove the component right there. So as you seen, it gets passed through, its case inside of this ground. Okay, so that's why, so I'm gonna unplay this. So that's why we need to add box collider for collision detection. So let's select this ground one more time and let's add the collider. So let's click on add component, let's add box collider. Okay, so now let's hit this play button, hit this play button in the top. Okay, and now as you can see, this player game object indeed skate fall down on the ground. Okay, so that's why we need to add box collider or collider for collision detection. Okay, and now what we need to move this game object in the forward direction. Okay, so in order to move this game object in the forward direction, we need to attach a custom component. So basically we need to add a script. Okay, and script does all of those things, basically the custom things that we want to improve. Okay, so I hope you get the basics of Unity, how you can play around with this tabs and you can toggle it down anywhere you want. Okay, if we want to move this player game object, okay, we need to add script. Basically in script we're gonna tell our player game object what player game object actually should do. Okay, so basically that is a custom thing, so that's why we need to create a script. So in order to create a script, select the game object first, move over to inspector, and in the bottom you can click add component. Okay, then go to new script in the bottom and name the script what you want. Okay, something like player. Okay, player. After naming that, click on create and add in the bottom section. Okay, so I already have created, or once or what else you can do, you can go to project tab, then asset, right click, create C# script, and name the script whatever you want. So I already created right over here, so I'm going to select that. Firstly, let's select this player game object and let's select this script and drag it to add component. Basically you need to attach this script to the game object in which game object you want implement that thing. Okay, so now let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio. So this is our player class. Basically class is a template, and in this template what we can define what a player should do, and we can use these properties and attributes and functions to implement in this player game object. Okay, so basically really sorry. So basically this player class is just a template or the design, and this is our actual game object in which we just wanna implement those things. Okay, and we have namespaces in the top, so this allow us to use some certain functions, attributes, and those things. Okay, so if you remove this using Unity engine, you're gonna get an error. As you can see, in mono behavior it's get red line. Okay, so basically namespaces allow us to use some certain functions. It can be attributes, variables, or anything like that. So I'm gonna include that using Unity engine. Okay, and we can remove these two namespaces in the top. We don't need it. We only need for now this Unity engine, using Unity engine. So let's remove that. And we have start function and update function. Okay, so this start function right over here, get call function, basically a set of line of code does specific things. Okay, and we can create custom functions as well. So this start function right over here, it's called get call once the game start. Basically, if you hit this place button, this function right over here gonna call right after the game start, and it just call one time. And we have update function in the bottom. Okay, this update function runs every single frame right after the game start, something like in 1 second, 60 times or 60 frame you can call, but it can depend upon on your system. So if you do have a fast system, then in 1 second this update function can call up to 120 frames. But in my case, I do have a little bit slow system, so in my case this update function runs can run in 1 second something like 60 frames, 50 frames, 50 frames, or 62, 61. It's gonna depend. Okay, so it not fixed at all. Okay, this update function, but this update function runs every single frame. Okay, so I'm gonna go to this start function, and if it's working perfectly or not, I'm gonna check. So how we can check that? We want to print out a console in the message. Okay, so we're gonna move to console, and if you can find the console tab, you need to go to window in the top. Okay, then go to general in the bottom, and you can find the console tab, or the shortcut key for it, control shift plus a. So we can print out a message, or we can debug basically it's working really or not. Okay, so let's go to script, and for printing out a message we have to use this debug. Okay, debug, then dot log. Okay, debug dot log, and we need to make this first bracket, and we have to pass a string value. So in quotation we have to pass a string value, basically whatever we want to say, something like we can say this is start function. Okay, this is start function. This is a start function, and you have to end your line of code by this semicolon. Make sure if you add up a semicolon, so this line gets basically stops right there. Okay, so what we doing, we using this debug.log function, and this function right over here in parameters. Okay, basically in brackets, it's gonna take an string, basically name, something like that. So in quotation we have to type, and you can type whatever you want to say. And once you done and you want to save the code, basically whatever you have done so far, you need to go to file in the top left. You can see. Okay, just go to top left, and then you can see save. Okay, save, or the shortcut key for it, control s. So you can click right over here, or what else you can do, you can press down control s at the same time, and it will save your code. Now we can move to our Unity, and it will take a few moments for compiling our script, basically whatever we have done so far. And now so if we hit this play button in the top and select the console in the bottom, that message just gonna pop up right after the game start, and it says this is a start function. As you can see, indeed that message just get popped up in the console. Okay, and it just called one time. As you can see, it's not getting popped up something like again and again. Okay, so that is the thing. And update function right there get called every single frame. Okay, so I'm gonna clear that, and let's go to script now. I'm gonna remove that. Okay, remove that, and let's move over to this update function, and we're gonna check if it's working really fine or not. Okay, so for printing out message, we do know we need to type debug.log, and brackets we need to pass a message in quotation what we want to say, something like this is update function, and it's call every single time. Okay, every single time, and make sure you close that off with semicolon to end to end your line of code whatever you have done. Now control S to save your code. Let's move to Unity. So we should able to see that message just gonna pop up again and again and again, because these update functions get called every single time. Okay, so that's why. So let's hit this play button in the top and let's see what's really happening. Okay, basically a line of so function basically does specific things. Okay, so as you can see, indeed the message just getting pop up every single time. Okay, you can see right over here. Okay, in 1 second it can call up to 60 frame, but it's depend upon on your system. Okay, so I'm gonna unplay this now. So I hope you get the about a little bit idea of this start and update function. Okay, so I'm gonna remove this. Instead what I'm gonna do, so what we need, we're gonna move this. Okay, this game object. So I'm gonna let's drag it down. I'm gonna take my camera. Okay, so let's select this main camera from hierarchy and let's take away a little bit further away from our player so we can see our player. Okay, something like this. So this is our player game object. So if we select this player, so what I want to add a force in the z axis. As you can see, this is our z axis, this is our x axis, and this is our no, x axis, this is y axis. Okay, so I'm gonna put x in the 0 so it will be centered. So I want to move this game object in forward direction, basically in z direction. So in order to move, as you can see, if we play around with z axis, we can see it's going forward direction and backward direction. So I want to move this game object in forward direction. Okay, and we attach a rigid body component, as you can see right in our player game object. So what we need a reference of this rigid body, and this rigid body component is responsible for adding up gravity, velocity, and all of kind of things about force. Okay, so basically we need a reference of this rigid body, and then we can set the velocity, or we're gonna add a force in the z axis. Okay, so let's open up our script by double clicking on it. So we need a reference. So let's go to top of our class. We need to go to top of our class and we need to make a variable, and the variable type is right over here. You can see rigid body. So we need a reference, a rigid body. So what we need to make it public. Okay, if we make it public right over here, we're gonna see able to see right over here that field. Okay, and if you make it something like private, as private, you're not gonna able to see this field right over here. Or if you remove this private, and by default it's gonna assign private. Okay, so that's why. So I'm gonna make it public so we can see, and the type of the variable or the component is rigid body. So we have to type rigid body, and we have to name the component. Okay, so we can call it rigid body. I'm gonna call it something like RB for short, for rigid body, and make sure you close that up with semicolon to end your line of code. And we need to press down Ctrl S to save your code, to saving our code. And now let's move to Unity. So we're gonna see a field rigid body just gonna pop up underneath our player script. So as you can see RB, and it says none rigid body. Basically this is totally empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna select this rigid body and drag it right there. Okay, so now we can see we have player rigid body. Okay, basically we have a reference or link of this rigid body of our player. Now we can add velocity or something like that. So let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio, and we're gonna move over to this update function. And we do know update function calls every single time, and we need to move this game object in the forward direction every single time. So that's the catch. So I'm gonna go to script now. Okay, script now, and we're gonna go to RB. Okay, dot velocity, or what else we can do, we're gonna do RB dot add force. So this add force right over here RB. So basically we just going over to this rigid body, and we using this add force function, and this force function will gonna take a vector 3. Okay, vector 3 basically direction. So direction, you can say vector 3 has x axis, y axis, and the z axis. So we just want to move our player game object in the z axis. So we're gonna type right over here vector 3, okay, vector 3 dot forward. So vector 3 dot forward right over here basically means forward, this forward direction about in the z axis. Or okay, or what else you can do, you can remove this vector 3 dot forward, else you can type new vector 3, okay, and we do know vector 3 has x axis, y axis and the z axis, okay. We don't want to move in the x axis for now, so we're gonna put 0f in the 0f, as well as we will do the same thing for y. We don't want to move in the y axis, so we're gonna put 0f in the y. So in the z axis we're gonna move, so we're gonna put in the z axis with something like 1f, basically means 1 unit every single frame. We're gonna go in the forward direction every single frame, basically z axis, okay. So that's the catch, and this is a force, so that's why we have to type comma and we have to include a second parameter, and it's called force mode 2d dot impulse, okay. We need to include that. Why? Because this is an force, okay. Make sure, so force mode 2d impulse, and close that up with semicolon, okay. And if we now control press down control s to save our code and move over to unity, we're gonna able to see this player game object, okay. This player game object will go in the z direction by 1 unit every single frame. So let's hit this play button in the top and let's see what's really happening. So it's gonna move right away so much fast, you're gonna able to see that, okay. So as you can see, indeed it's going too much fast. So what we're gonna do instead, we don't want to go that much fast, okay. So what we're gonna do instead, instead we will go to script now. So right over here we also need to multiply this whole thing, this speed, or this 1f, this vector 3, with time dot delta time. Why? So let's I do have a little bit slow system, so this update function is gonna run something like in 1 second 60 frames, okay. But if you using a fast system, so in your case this update function is gonna run in 1 second 120 frames. So you can see the difference, there is a huge difference between our frame rates, okay, about something like 60. So to make it constant, okay, to make it constant, what we need to multiply this vector 3 or the force with time dot delta time. So make this a star and we just have to multiply that time dot delta time. Now whatever system you gonna use, it will run in fixed frame rate, okay. So in my case it will run in 1 second 60 frames. So even you using a fast system, this update function gonna still run in 1 second 60 frames. So that's the thing, okay. To make basically frame rate constant, we need to multiply with this time dot delta time, okay. So once you done, control s to save your code. Now let's move to unity. We should able to see this player game objects now gonna go in the forward direction by 1 unit, but it's gonna go slowly, okay. So let's hit this play button in the top and let's see the result, what's we basically how much fast we can go in the forward direction, okay. So I guess it's pretty much slow. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna basically, it's not moving at all. So we're gonna multiply this whole thing with some speed or some velocity or speed, something like that, so we can move a little bit faster. So we can multiply with something like 10f, or instead of hard coding this, we're gonna make a variable you can think of container, okay, that can put values and we can change later them. So let's go to top of, we need to move over to top of our class and we're gonna make it public, okay, public, so we can adjust it right over here. So that's why we don't need to come to the script and change this value over again and again. And that will be float are those numbers which comes with decimal places like 1.5, 0.5, 1.2, okay, something like that. And also whole numbers like 1 2 3 4, also a float number. And we have to name the variable or the container, let's call it something like move speed, okay. And by default you can give it something like 10f, okay. And make sure you put f at the end, basically means float, okay. You can give it or you can leave it like this, and you can adjust it underneath your player script. So I'm gonna give a default value, so let's set equal to 10f, and I'm gonna replace this 10f with this move speed. Okay, and move speed is 10, so we're gonna go in the forward direction with this much of speed, which is 10 unit every single frame. So once you done, control s to save your code. Now let's move to Unity. So we should able to see this player game object gonna go in the forward direction with 10 amount of speed. Okay, so just wait for to compile. So and we can adjust it right over here, so we don't need to go to the script and change this value over again and again. Okay, so now let's hit this play button in the top and let's see what's really happening. Okay, so we should able to see, as you can see, indeed we going to forward direction, but the problem is that our player game object is rotating. Basically we have friction. Okay, to make our the friction smoothness, we need to make something else. Okay, so basically we need to move over to project tab, then assets, right click on assets, then create, and we're gonna create a material. Okay, so basically physics material. Okay, that will be friction. So we're gonna go to, we can find it over here, something there. Okay, so basically find that I'm just, I don't have much. Okay, so we got it over here, as you can see in the bottom, physics material. So click on that, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna call it something like friction. Let's call it friction. And I really apologize if I spell it wrong. Okay, so I'm gonna set this dynamic friction to 0 as well as static friction to 0, so we're gonna have smooth. Okay, smoothness, so this player game object not gonna rotate something like weird behavior. Okay, so what we have to do now, we're gonna select this ground. Okay, select this ground and go over to box collider. Okay, a box collider, and you can see a material field, and it says non material, physics material. So what we need, we need to select this material friction, and let's just drag it right there. Now we're not gonna have any friction, I hope. So let's hit this play button in the top, and our player game object gonna go in the forward direction smoothly. Okay, so let's have a look on this, and we should able to see, as you can see, indeed the friction, it's gone now. Okay, and the platform gets and up. So I hope you get the idea, and you can make the bounciness something like that. Okay, you can play around with this value and you're gonna get hang of it. So I hope you get the idea. And if you want to change the color of this ground, I'm gonna make this ground a little bit scale in the x axis. So let's select this ground, let's move over to transform, and I'm gonna make in the x scale something like let's make it 10, or a little bit something like 12. Okay, or what else you can do, you can select this ground and select this scale tool right over here. Okay, and you can scale this in the x-axis something like this. So I'm gonna make it like this much. Okay, so this is seems cool. Or what else you can do, you can select the ground and move over to transform, then scale, and in the x-axis you can define. Okay, it's totally up to you. And if you want to change the color of this ground, what you need to make a ground material or material. Okay, so in order to do that, you need to go to project tab, assets, we created a material folder, so let's go over to that, right click and create, and we're gonna create a material, and let's call this one ground material. Okay, ground material. Okay, and let's say change, let's do something like green. So I'm gonna select this material, go over to inspector and click on albedo, and I'm gonna choose something like ground green, and let's select this material and drag it to this ground. Okay, you can do this thing. Or what else you can do, if I just select this ground and move over to mesh renderer, and if I select this to none or default material. Okay, sorry, default material, what else you can do, you can select this ground and select the material ground and drag it over to materials field. Okay, and element, and just drag it. You can do this thing, or you can select that and directly drag it to that game object, okay, and it will change directly. So I hope you get the idea how you can do it, okay. So now if we hit this play button on one more time, the friction will be gone because we created a physics material, okay. And let's, okay, so this is pretty cool now. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make folder to keep all of this thing, all of the things in organized. So let's go to project tab, then assets, so right click, create, let's create a script folder, okay. So let's call it something like scripts, okay. And let's select this script, player script, and let's drag it right there, okay. To basically keep all of the thing organized, or we just need to create folders, okay, to do so. So just wait for to compile, it's gonna take a little bit of time, because we just place it our script into another folder, so that's why it's compiling. Also let's create a physics material folder, so right click on assets, then create folder, let's call this one physics material, okay. Physics material, physics material. Basically create folders to keep all of the thing organized, and you can find them easily. So let's select this friction material and let's drag it right there, okay. And also what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a prefab folder. Basically what we have to do now, we need to turn this into a prefab basically means copy of that game object. So now if I select this player game object and select this player and move it over to, basically drag it into this assets, as you can see it's turned out blue, okay. Why? Now this is a prefab, basically means copy, we just created a copy. Now if I delete from this scene view, as you can see it's gone, okay. So what we can do, we can select that and we can directly drag it, from that folder, basically assets folder, to that scene view or hierarchy, and we're gonna set to 0. So that is the cool thing. Okay, make prefab, so you don't need to work from scratch, you don't need to attach this script and then do all of these things. It will be saved if you just make a prefab, basically means copy of that game object, okay. Make sure you do that, so you will have a save option and you don't need to start, you don't need to start working from scratch, okay. And let's also create a prefab folder to keep this thing also in organized way, okay. Sorry. So let's go to project tab, then asset, right click, create folder, okay. Folder, let's call this folder something like prefabs, okay. Prefabs, so let's call it prefabs. And now let's select this player and let's drag it right there, okay. And so whatever you have done now, if you want to save this, you need to go to file in the top left and click on this save, okay. And you can see the shortcut key for it in the right section. Or what else you can do, you can just press down Ctrl S, so it will save whatever you have done in Unity editor or in your project, okay. So I hope you get the basics idea of it, how you can use a script to do some specific things and materials, okay. We can take our main camera and make a child of our player game object, okay. So we can select this main camera and just drag it top of or on your player game object. Now this main camera is a child of our player game object, and player game object is now parent. So if we hit this play button in the top, our main camera gonna follow our player game object in the direction player is going, because this main camera is now child of our player game object, as you can see it's going. But the problem is that we're gonna get weird behavior. So if I select this main camera and move to transform and rotate in the y-axis, as you can see camera indeed rotating weirdly, and also in the z-axis. So we don't want our main camera to rotate weirdly like this. So that's why we're gonna create a script, and that script, in that script we're gonna make a camera follow, okay. So I'm gonna set back this to 0 once again, and 0 0 in the x and y and z. So I'm gonna take my main camera and let's drag it out. Instead, let's create a script, and that script gonna handle to follow our camera only in the z axis, okay. To do so, let's go to project tab, then assets, then script, right click, create C# script, name it to something like follow. So I already have created right over here. So I'm gonna select this main camera, okay, and select this script and drag it to add component section. Or what else you can do, you can click on this add component and then click on new script and name the script what you want, and then click on create and add. Okay, so let's double click that script to open up in Visual Studio. So as you can see, we have start and update method. Let's remove these two namespaces in the from top, and also this start function, we don't need it for now. Okay, instead what we need this player transform. Okay, player transform basically position, rotation and scale, so we can follow this player. Okay, so that's why, so let's go to top of our class and let's make a public transform. Okay, transform, and let's call it something like player position or player, and close that up with semicolon, control S to save your code. And now let's move to Unity. So we're gonna see an empty field just gonna pop up underneath our follow script. Okay, says player transform. So what we need, select this main camera, as you can see player, and it says none transform, basically none position. So what we're gonna do, let's select this player and drag it out there. Now we have player transform, basically means position. Now we can follow that. Okay, so now let's go to script. Oh, okay, and we will move to update function. Why? This update function runs every single frame, so that's why. And we need to follow our player game object every single frame wherever the player is going. Okay, so so we're gonna say transform. Okay, transform dot position equal to, basically transform dot position right over here means main camera position in the x-axis, y-axis and the z-axis. Okay, so basically player transform dot position right over here means this transform, then we just moving over to this position, basically main camera position. And we're gonna set equal to, so basically this is a vector 3 which has x-axis, y-axis and the z-axis. So that's why we need to set a new vector 3 or new 3 axis, you can say. So we will set new vector 3. Okay, new vector 3, and vector 3 has x-axis, y-axis and the z-axis. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. So we don't want to follow our player game object in the x-axis. Okay, let me show that to you. So if I select this player game object, sorry, this player game object, and we don't want so if the player goes right over here something like this, okay, this or this, you can do that, I guess it would be fine. Oh, okay, so we will follow in the x-axis as well, so I'm gonna set back to 0. So we just don't want to follow in the y-axis, which will be the up, as you can see. So we only want to follow in the z and in the x. Okay, so that is the thing. So let's set to 0, and in the y, so I'm gonna leave it that, let's set it to 0. I'm gonna, let's drag it right over here. So now let's go to script. So we're gonna put in the x-axis player. Okay, player dot position dot x. So basically just moving over to this player, then going over to this transform, then accessing this position, and then putting x-axis, so x position of the player. So okay, so player position in the x-axis will be our main camera position in the x-axis. So wherever the player goes, if the player just goes in the left direction, so the main camera will also gonna go in the left direction. Basically we just replacing that x-axis with player position in the x-axis. So that's why our main camera gonna follow our player in the x-axis, basically horizontally. Okay, and what we're gonna do in the y-axis, we don't want to follow, so we're gonna pass transform dot position dot y. Basically transform dot position dot y means current position in the y-axis main camera. So basically we just leaving this main camera in the y-axis, which is 1. So this right over here gonna be 1. So it's basically means current position of the main camera in the y-axis, and we also want to follow our player in the z-axis. So that's why we're gonna change this z with player position in the z-axis, so basically wherever the player goes. So we're gonna pass player dot position, okay, dot position dot z. Basically the main camera position will now follow player in the z axis as well and in the x axis as well, but it's not gonna follow in the y axis. We just leaving as it is. The main camera y position in the y axis, we just leaving as it is. Okay, so once you done, control s to save your code. And now let's move to unity. Now we should able to see the main camera just gonna follow our player in the horizontally as well as in the forward direction. Okay, so let's hit this play button in the top and let's see what's really happening. Okay, so just wait for to compile and let's see. Okay, so the problem is that if I hit this pause button in the top and select this player game object and F to focus on it, so basically what we need to make some offset so we can see the player. So player position in the Z axis will be the player position, a main camera position in the Z axis. So this one, so player position in the Z axis, which is 24. So that's why main camera position in the Z axis becomes 24. Why? We directly setting it, as you can see, we replace it that Z with player position in the Z axis. So basically we need to add some offset to this Z so we can see the player. Basically we just gonna drag this player up, okay, something like. So we're gonna add some kind of float parameter or some distance so we can see the player whole. Okay, so I'm gonna unplay this now. So let's go to script and let's go to top of our class. Okay, and let's make a variable float variable. Let's make a public float. Okay, and let's call it offset z, and by default I'm gonna set it to something like 5f or 5 unit, and let's top up our z axis. Okay, so let's add offset in the z axis. Okay, so now so control s to save your code and let's move to unity. So the player will be in front of our main camera and the distance between them will be 5 unit. So basically we just offsetting our player in the z axis, okay, main camera position. So let's hit this play button and let's see what's really happening, and you can adjust the value always. Okay, so if I hit this pause button and F2 player, so as you can see, okay, so in it goes negative direction. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna select this main camera and we will put right over here mine, instead of 5 we're gonna put -5. Basically we just subtracting. Okay, just play around with negative and positive value and you're gonna get hang of it. Okay, so now let's hit this play button. Now we should able to see the player game object will be seen whole. Okay, from main camera, as you can see now it's fine. Okay, now it's fine. Main camera just going with our player game object. Okay, so what we gonna do now, we also need to move our this player game object left and right. Okay, left and right. So how we can do that? So let's open up our player script by double clicking on it. Double clicking on it. Okay, double clicking on it, and let's use this function. So let's move over to this update function, and in update function what's we gonna do, we're gonna use this function. It's called input. Okay, input dot get axis, and in quotation you have to pass the axis name. So we want our player game object to move horizontally, basically left and right. So that's why in quotation we're gonna pass horizontal. Okay, horizontal, and close that up with semicolon. So this input dot get axis horizontal function, okay, this is a unity inbuilt function, and this gonna give a negative value. It's gonna give us -1, +1 or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. So let's suppose we holding down a key. Okay, so this input dot get axis just map up with our a and d key. Okay, so let's suppose you just hold down a key, so this function's gonna give us -1, and if you just hold down instead of a key to d key, then it will give us a +1, and if you just lift off your finger from both of those keys, okay, so this one right over here gonna give us a 0. Okay, 0 value. So what we will do, we will store into a variable. Okay, so let's go to top of our class. and let's make a public float. It doesn't need to be public, okay, and let's call this one something like movement, okay, and let's close that off with semicolon. So whatever the result is, what we will do, we will set movement, okay, movement equal to this. So this movement can be -1, +1 or 0 depending upon what key we holding down, okay. So control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity, okay. So why basically whatever the result is, we just storing into this movement variable, because we directly setting it, as you can see, equal to, okay. So let's go to Unity now, and let's select this player game object. As you can see, movement by default is 0. So if I select this F to focus on it, okay, so this is our player. So this movement can be -1, +1 or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. So if we hold down, so this one movement will be -1. If we hold down instead of A key to D key, so this will give us 1, and if we don't hold both of those keys, so this movement will be 0, okay. So let's take that out. So let's hit this play button in the top and try to hold down A and D key. The result will be shown as seen right over here. So let's see. So as you can see, if I hold down A key, it's became -1, and if I hold down one D key, as you can see, it's became 1, and if I just lift off my finger from both of those keys, as you can see, this one becomes 0, okay. So I'm gonna unplay this. So what we want to add this movement to our this transform, then put basically we just gonna go over to this transform, then position, and top of this in the x-axis we're gonna add this movement. So this movement can be -1, +1 or 0. So this position can be -1. So if it's -1, so it will go to negative value, and if we put +1, it will go to positive value, and if we just lift up put 0, it will be centered. So basically we just want to replace this x with this movement, okay. So firstly we need to move over to this transform, then position, and we have to do it. So let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio, and let's go to bottom over here, and we will firstly need to move over to transform. So let's go to transform, then dot position. So basically we just moving over to this transform, then position, and top of this position we're gonna add plus equal. So this transform dot position is a three-dimensional data which has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. So that's why we have to set equal to plus equal. Top of that we're gonna add a new vector 3 which also has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis, okay. Basically three-dimensional data. So in the x-axis what we will do, we will replace this x with our movement, and we do know this movement can be +1, -1 or 0 depending upon what key we holding down, and we don't want to move in the y-axis like this, okay. So that's why we're gonna put a 0 in the y, as well as we will do in the 0 as in the z-axis. We of course we just moving in the z-axis 1 unit. So over here if we hold down A or D key, we don't want to move in the z-axis, okay. And make sure you just multiply this movement with time dot delta time to make frame rate independence, okay. So let's multiply with time dot delta time so it's gonna move left and right by 1 unit every single frame like this, okay. So if we can control the speed, it would be nice. So let's make a variable, okay. So let's go to top of our class, and let's make a public float side movement or speed, you can call. Let's call it speed, and by default I'm gonna give something like 5f or 5 unit. So let's multiply this thing, okay, movement or movement with our speed, okay. So we can move a little bit faster, okay, and we can adjust it in inspector. So we don't need to come to this script and change this value again and again and again. So that's why we just made it public, so we can adjust it right underneath our player script, okay. So once you done, control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. So we should able to see an speed parameter just gonna pop up underneath our player script, okay. And by default we just set it to 5, as you can see. Okay, 5. So let's hit this play button, and we should able to see that we're gonna move left and right with this much of speed, and we can adjust it over here. It's totally up to you, as you can see. But the problem is that we just weirdly moving. Okay, so what we gonna do now, so before we move, we're gonna put this line of code this line of code up. Okay, so we're gonna hold down alt, and if you use up arrow key, you can up or down, you can move your line of code. Okay, so I'm gonna move. So before I add the force in the z axis, so I'm just moving. Okay, so control s, just move your line of code in the up. Okay, before you add a force in the z axis, we just have to do it. Okay, so now if we hit this play button, it should be gone by now. Okay, so let's check that, and let's hope it's gonna work fine. So it's still giving us some kind of weird behavior. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to, we will use another function. Okay, for that, so let's go to fixed update. Basically fixed update, let me explain this. Okay, so this fixed update function right over here, this function get called every single frame, but it's called in frame fixed frame rate. But this update function in 1 second, it can run, it can just pass 60 frames, 50 frames, 55. So it's gonna totally depend. But the fixed update function right over here, it's gonna run in fixed frame rate. Let's suppose in 1 second it's run 50 frames. So in next second, it's still gonna run in basically 50 frames in 1 second. The frame rate right over here is fixed, so that's why. So we're gonna cut this line of code by control X. Okay, and let's paste it in control fixed update. Okay, and make sure you just multiply instead of dot delta time with fixed delta time. Okay, we have to use fixed delta time in fixed update. Okay, so control S on your keyboard, and let's move to Unity. And basically this function as same as this update function, but over here the frame rate is fixed. Okay, in 1 second it's gonna, the frame rate is constant basically. Okay, so let's go to script, let's hit this play button in the top, and we should able to see now the error will be gone by now. And if it's still just happening, okay, so as you can see, the junky movement just get rid of. Okay, so let me hit this play button one more time, and you gonna able to see that junky movement is gone by now. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. As you can see, we can move left and right now smoothly. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. Just put line of code, just play around, and you're gonna get hang of it. So I'm gonna move, I'm gonna make the code a little bit cleaner, something like this. Now it's fine, and control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. So you can adjust the speed. Okay, my speed right over here, how much fast you want to go left and right, you can just play around with it. Okay, so once you done, make sure you just hit control S, okay, on your keyboard to save whatever you have done in Unity editor, so it will be saved. Or what else you can do, you can go to top left in the file and then click on this save, or you can also see the shortcut key. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of this. Let's create some obstacle. Okay, so hold down alt, you can move around like this, and you can scroll your mouse, okay, to zoom and out. So let's create some obstacle. So let's go to hierarchy, right click, then 3D object cube. Okay, and let's call this cube something like obstacle. So let's call it obstacle, sorry, obstacle. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna, let's drag it down. Okay, somewhere around here, and let's scale it in the X, something like so I'm gonna select that obstacle, if to focus on it, let's scale it in the X. Okay, something like, let's do 4. I guess 4 would be pretty large. Let's do 3.5. 3.5, and in the y let's do something like 4, not 4, let's do 2 instead. Okay, so this is our ground. Instead of 2, let's do 1.5, something like this one is great. So I'm gonna drag it somewhere around here, and also by default it's added up a box collider 2D, as you can see. So I'm gonna add one more component to this obstacle, which will be rigid body for gravity. Okay, so let's select this obstacle. I'll click on add component. Let's find over there rigid body. Okay, and I'm gonna increase the mass something like let's do 3. Okay, and if let's change the color. To change the color we need to create the material. So let's go to project tab, assets, material, right click, create, and let's create a material, and let's call this material something like obstacle material. Let's call it obstacle material. Okay, and then select this material, go over to inspector. I'm gonna choose something like dark black color. Okay, and let's choose this material and drag it onto this obstacle. Okay, so as you can see now, let's drag it somewhere around here, and if we hit this play button we should able to see that our player game object gonna push this obstacle in the forward direction, because that is an obstacle. Okay, we should able to see, as you can see, our player gets stopped, and when we are side we can see we still moving. So basically we need to add a force to stop our player game object. Okay, so once we collide with this obstacle, we want our player game object to be stopped, or basically we need to stop our player game object. We will add a negative force or something like that. Okay, so that is the thing. So before we do that, let's duplicate this obstacle. First of all, let's make it prefab. So let's select this obstacle, let's go to prefab folder, and let's drag it right there. Okay, so now it's turned blue, basically means prefab means copy of that game object. Hold down alt so you can look around. Let's drag it somewhere around here. Okay, and let's duplicate this. So control D to duplicate. Let's move it somewhere around here. Okay, and let's duplicate one more time. Let's move it here. Okay, just do the thing I am doing. So control D, select both of them by holding down shift and control D to duplicate, and let's move it somewhere around here. Let's duplicate one more time, control D, and let's move it here and control D. Okay, somewhere around here. So this is pretty cool. Now let's select any of them. I'm gonna move this one in the middle, so I'm gonna set as X position in the 0, and this one I want. So let's select this and let's make the X position in the 0. Okay, something like this, and I guess it's pretty fine. Now I'm gonna drag this main camera a little bit further away, as well as let's select this our player game object, let's drag it over here somewhere, and let's make the hierarchy little more clean. To make it clean, let's create an empty game object. Okay, and I'm gonna select all of this game object and gonna make a make child all of this game object to okay, we have to make it child. To make it, so let's go to hierarchy, right click or hit this plus icon. Let's create an empty game object. Let's call this game object something like obstacle holder. Okay, obstacle holder. Let's go to transform and reset the transform and select all of this obstacle by holding down shift and just place it top of this obstacle holder. Now we can collapse it one by clicking right over here. Basically all of this obstacle is a child now of our obstacle holder. Now we can collapse it and at once to make it hierarchy clean. Okay, so click right over here. Now our hierarchy is lot more cleaner. Okay, so control S to save whatever you have done in Unity editor. Now let's hit this play button in the top. We should able to see that see that our player game object just have to avoid this. So okay, so we can, so over time the speed are getting faster and faster. I'm gonna make this ground in the z-axis some little more large. Okay, so I'm gonna select this ground and let's make it in the z-axis something like 1000. Let's do it instead for 100. Okay, 400 seems pretty cool. Let's drag it right over here something like this. And okay, so this I guess uh, now it's pretty fine. So let's select this obstacle and let's duplicate this. So I'm gonna select this one and F2 focus on it. Let's duplicate this one. Let's select this one by control, by holding down control and click over there. Okay, so you can select them and control D to duplicate. Let's move it here. Let's duplicate one more time. Just play around. Okay, you can play around with the level. Just play around and you're gonna get hang of it. So let's, okay, so pretty fine now. So I'm gonna drag this one. Let's make this 0x position in the 0. Let's select this one. I'm gonna select this one. Let's make it 0 in the x. Let's select this one, F2 focus on it. Okay, and let's make in the x 0 position and let's select this one. Let's make it 0 in the x and let's select this one. Let's make it in the x0. Okay, and F2 focus on it. Let's select both of them by holding down control. Okay, and let's move it little bit farther away and let's duplicate this. Control D to duplicate. Okay, control D to duplicate. And I hope you get the idea how you can just do it. So holding down control, you can select specifically what you want to select. Basically you can select multiple. Let's move it somewhere here. Okay, so it's pretty fine now. And if we hit this play button, our level is pretty good now. Okay, so what we have to do, so just wait. So this is our game and overtime speed getting faster and faster. Okay, once we collide with this obstacle, okay, we want our player game object to stop. Okay, so over time, as you can see, the speed getting faster and faster, but our speed still just moving, our player is still moving. So we just have to add a force to our player game object. Okay, once we collide with this game object. Before we do that, what we want, let's select this main camera. Basically let's go to main camera, then go over to inspector, click on this main camera and skybox as select solid color. Okay, and you can choose any color you want. Click on this solid color, sorry, not skybox, solid color, and you can choose any color. So I'm gonna choose something like white or something like that. It's totally up to you what you want, what color you want, something like this. Okay, so I'm gonna choose somewhere around yellow. Okay, yellow or white. Let's choose white. Okay, so white seems pretty good. Basically what you have to do, you need to select this main camera, go over to inspector, then click right over here and clear flags. You just click from skybox to select solid color and you can click right over here background and you can choose color you want. So I have chosen white. Okay, so as you can see, and we can play our game. Okay, and we also need to make our high score. And if you want to unlimited spawn this obstacle, I will have a video in the description. Okay, in the dodge series I just made that, so you can watch that video to make it unlimited obstacles. Okay, it will work for 3D as well. So I hope you get the idea. I will have a video in the description, so you can go and check that out if you want to make unlimited obstacle. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of it. And whatever you have done, control S hit Control S to save whatever you have done so far. It will be saved. Okay. Once we collide with these blocks, we want player game object to stop. We don't wanna move in the forward direction at all. Okay, so we want our player game object to stop moving in the forward direction. So let's go to script. So let's open up our player script. Okay, and in the bottom we're gonna use this function. It's called on collision enter, and this function right over here get called when we collide with something. Okay, so if we collide with these blocks or obstacle, then this function's gonna call. And okay, and we can extract info what we collided with by going to this collision variable. We can extract info like name, tag, any component that we are looking for. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna check right over here. So this function get called when we collide with something, and we're gonna check what we collided with. So we're gonna type debug.log. Okay, and we just want to extract the name of the game object we collided with. So we just have to go to this collision variable, then dot game object. So we're going to that game object dot, we're gonna access the name. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So what we basically doing, firstly this function get so if we collide with this ground, okay, so this function gonna get called. And what we doing inside this function, so basically we just printing out, so basically we just moving over to collision, then game object, basically whatever we collided with. So if we collide with this block, okay, so we going to this game object, and by this game object we just accessing the name, which will be obstacle. So we're gonna see in the console the obstacle message just gonna pop up right away once we collide with this obstacle. So let's select this console and let's go to script. Firstly, Control S to save your code whatever you have done, and now let's move to Unity. So once we collide with this obstacle, so the obstacle names just gonna pop up underneath in console tab. Okay, so let's do that. So let's hit this play button in the top, and let's collide with any of these obstacles. So the message just gonna pop up. Okay, says obstacle, because so as you can see obstacle, and as well as we and if we collide with second obstacle, as you can see the name of the obstacle just getting pop up in the console right away. So as you can see, so instead of printing out message, what we want our player game object to stop moving in the forward direction. So let's go to script. Okay, and over here instead of printing out message, what we're gonna do, we're gonna check firstly. So we have to type this if condition and make first bracket and some curly bracket. So we're gonna pass inside between these brackets, so we're gonna check. Okay, so collision, okay, collision dot game object dot tag, and we will check that tag if it's equal to block. So in quotation we have to do. So before we do that, so what we gonna do, we're gonna go to Unity, and we have to assign all of this obstacle with some certain tag. Okay, so I'm gonna select all of this obstacle in hierarchy by holding down shift. Let's select all of them, then go over to inspector, then click on untag, and click on add tag, and hit this plus icon, and name the tag what you want. So I'm gonna name it something like block. Okay, and then click on save, and go to that game object, basically select all of this game object by holding down shift and assign whatever you have named it. So I'm gonna click on untag and assign it as block. So we assign it, basically I assign it all of this block obstacle as a block tag. And over here, so I'm gonna go to script. Over here I'm just checking whatever we collided with, we're going to that game object and then accessing the tag. And I am just checking if the tag is equals to block, and we do know we assign it all of this obstacle with block tag. So we're gonna collide with those blocks. So what we have to do, we're gonna we just have to stop moving our player game object. Okay, so I'm gonna make this move speed. As you can see, move speed is 10 unit, basically this much of speed we going in the forward direction. So I'm gonna set this move speed to something 0, so the player will not move anyway. So let's go to that. So once we collide with those blocks, so we firstly this function get called when we collide with something, and we checking right over here whatever we collided with, we going to that game object, then accessing the tag, and we checking if that tag is equals to block tag, and we do know we assign it that block as a block tag, so we definitely gonna collide with that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make this move speed equal to 0. Okay, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon. So we just made move speed to 0, basically setting it to 0. So we're not gonna move in the forward direction at all. So if we multiply, so move speed is now 0, so 0 into 1, which will be 0. So we're not gonna move in the forward direction or in the z axis, so it will be 0, so we're not gonna move anyway. Okay, so control s to save your code. Okay, and go to unity and make sure control s, firstly hit down control s, go to unity, and it will take a few moments for compiling your script. Okay, and make sure you just assign all of this obstacle or block with some certain tag. So I did just block, so you can do whatever you want wish to do it. Okay, so let's hit this play button in the top, and let's collide with some block. Okay, collide with any block. So I'm gonna collide with something like this one. Okay, as you can see, we not moving at all now. So if I go to player script player game object in hierarchy, as you can see move speed became 0, so that's why we not moving in the forward direction. If we set it one more time to 4 or 3, 3, so we basically we just not moving at all, so we're moving as you can see. But once we set this move speed to 0, okay, 0, as you can see player get stop. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how you can stop or how collision works in unity. Okay, so basically this type of function, basically this on collision inter function, this function get called when we collide with something. Okay, and this function get called automatically by unity once we collide with something, and we checking right over here whatever we collided with, if that game object has tag block, and we do know that we assign it that obstacle or that block as a block tag, so we're gonna collide with that. So what we're doing, we just setting move speed to 0, so we just not moving at all. So I hope you get the idea. So what I'm gonna do now, we're gonna create a basically score system. Okay, score system something like that, to keep track of how much progress player made so far. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So in order to create a UI or take something like that, what we need a canvas first. Okay, we need to create the canvas first, and we have to place all of the UI elements like score, collectible items like icons, button, all of those things will goes into that canvas. So in order to create the canvas, what you need to do, you need to go to hierarchy, right click or hit this plus icon, then go to UI and select this canvas. Okay, and select this canvas. I'm going to drag it top of my hierarchy so I can see all the time. So select the canvas and F to focus on it. So this is our canvas, and hold down alt and just move your mouse, you can see the look of the canvas. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to inspector and scroll down to the bottom, says canvas is scalar, and it says UI scale mode to constant pixel size. So just click on that and click on scale with screen size. So the canvas will gonna scale with our screen size, it's just gonna match up. Okay, so in the X we're gonna choose something like 1920, and in the Y let's choose 1080. Okay, resolution it's totally up to you how much you want. So I hope you get the idea. And into this canvas we need to place all of the UI elements like a score, icons, buttons, all of those things will goes into this canvas. Okay, so we need to do those things. Let's right click on the canvas. So let's go to canvas in hierarchy, right click, then go to UI, and let's go to legacy and then text. Okay, I'm gonna call this text something like score text. So let's call it score text. Okay, and we cannot able to see the text. Okay, So let's go to score text inspector. Then firstly let's select this scale tool. Okay, let's scale it and hold down alt so it will scale from center. And let's make the font size little bit larger. Okay, something like let's make a 100. So as you can see, we are now able to see in the game view. Okay, and instead of saying new text, I'm gonna call let's set it to 0. Okay, so the score will be 0. And let's go to bottom and let's choose alignment both of this center. Okay, and what I want, select font style to bold. Okay, and if you do have any font, you can drag it right over here. Firstly you need to drag in project, then assets, and you have to select that font and drag it to this font field. Okay, so and you are good to go. And what we're gonna do now, we're gonna go to rect transform of this rect score text and click right over here and hold down all and select this top one. Okay, now if I try to scale down my screen or scale up my screen, as you can see the score text is just scaling up and down according to our screen size and the canvas, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea, and it just always staying in the top, so that's why we just selected that. Okay, and we're gonna make the font size a little bit more larger. Okay, something like 125 to make it cool. Let's scale this some down. Okay, select this rect tool right over here and just play around with it. Okay, so now we have score text. Let's create a script. Okay, let's create a score manager script, something like that, to increase our score. Okay, so if we hit this play button in the top, we doing nothing with this score. So what we want, we just want to keep increasing this score. Okay, once we just playing, as you can see, over time the speed just getting faster and faster. And what we want to increase this score. Okay, we just want to increase this score. So let's create a script for that. So let's go to project tab, then assets, script, right click on assets, then create C# script. Let's call this one to something like score manager. Okay, score manager, and double click that to open up in Visual Studio, and it will take a few moments. Okay, and make sure you just attach this score manager script to any game object of your hierarchy. You can attach to this canvas, main camera, or any game object in hierarchy. So I'm gonna not do that. I'm gonna create an empty game object for this score managers as well script. So let's go to hierarchy, right click, then create empty game object. Let's call this game object to something like score manager as the name of our script, something like that. Go over to transform, let's reset the transform. I'm gonna select this game object, let's drag it top of our hierarchy, and let's now select this script from that assets folder or script. Okay, and drag it to add component section. So basically you need to attach that, or what else you can do, you can click on this add component and find the script by typing name of the script you recently created and attach that. Or you can do just click on new script and name the script what you want, then click on create and add. Okay, now double click that to open up in Visual Studio. So we have start function, so let's remove this start function, we don't need it, as well as these two namespaces in the top, we don't need it. Okay, for now, instead what we need, we're gonna use this using Unity engine. Okay, Unity engine, Unity engine dot UI. So why we have to include this, basically this namespace using Unity engine dot UI gonna allow us that text. Okay, basically this text is a UI elements, so that's why we have to include this namespace in top of our script, which is using Unity engine dot UI. Make sure that. Okay, and let's create a variable something like current score, something like that, and we just want to increase that current score every single frame. So let's make a public Okay, public int or not in, we're gonna make it float. So okay, so it will be decimal places, and let's call this one something like current score. Okay, current score, and by default I'm gonna give it to 0f. And what we why? Because when the game start, we're gonna have current score 0. Okay, and we're gonna move over to this update function, and update function runs every single frame. So we just want to keep increasing this current score with some unit every single frame. Okay, so we're gonna move over to update function. Let's add this to current score some units, so plus equal some kind of speed or some kind of amount, something like I'm gonna do with 0.15. Okay, point 1, sorry, point 1. And what we're gonna do, we're to make it constant this number. Okay, to make it constant, we're gonna multiply this number with time dot delta time as well. Okay, so we just increasing current score every single frame by this much of amount, which is zero point 0.1. You can make a variable as well for this one. You just have to go to top of your class and make something like public float amount. Okay, it's totally up to you what you want. And also make sure you just multiply this 0.1 with time to delta time to make frame rate independence, because we're doing inside update function. Okay, and we just need to make this number constant, so every single frame we just gonna add this number, not much a bigger number. Okay, so let's multiply this whole thing with time dot delta time to make frame rate independence. Control S to save your code, and now let's move to Unity. So that field just gonna pop up underneath our score manager script, which is current score. Okay, current score. So just wait. So as you can see, current score by default is 0. Okay, so now if I hit this play button, and you're gonna able to see that this current score will keep increasing by that zero point 0.1 unit. Okay, so as you can see, it's increasing. The problem is that amount is too much slow. Okay, it just keep increasing and increasing, and now it's became 1. So I'm gonna multiply that thing with a larger number, something like let's multiply this with 10f. Okay, that zero point 0.1 is a too much less, so that's why I just put a bigger number. Okay, control S. So what we need to do, so this is our current score. As you seen, we just able to see in inspector. So what we have to do, we just want to link up that current score with our this text. Okay, so basically we just want to show this current score in the UI. So that's why we just gonna link up this current score with this score text UI. Okay, so basically what we need now, we need a reference of this score text UI so we can link up. So let's go to script now, and let's go to top of our class. Okay, and make sure you just using this namespace, else you not gonna able to get that text. Okay, this allow us to text component as well. So let's make a public that is a text component. So we have to type text, and let's call it something like score text, or let's call it score text, something like that. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code and move to Unity. So we should able to see an empty field of score text that's gonna pop up underneath our score manager. So what we need, so as you can see, sorry, as you can see, score text and it says none, basically empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to canvas, and let's select this score text and drag it right there. Basically this score text, we just dragging this text, or this score text you can say. Okay, so we have now link up. Okay, so let's go to script now. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go to score text. Okay, score text, then dot text, and we will set equal to current score, and close that off with semicolon. And this is a float number, and this is an string number. Okay, so basically this is a float number, so we need to convert this float number to a string. In order to convert that to a string, we just have to type dot to string and make this first bracket. Okay, so what we're doing right over here, we're going to score text, then text, accessing the text component, and we're setting equal to current score. So basically logically we're just moving over to this this score text and then accessing this text, and we will be setting this text equal to current score. So let's suppose current score right over here is something like 5. So the score text dot text right over here gonna be 5 because we directly setting it, as you can see. So score text will update according to our current score. Basically we directly setting it, as you can see. Okay, so control S to save your code, and let's go to Unity. So we should able to see the score text will this score text or this UI will keep increasing as our current score. Basically we showing this current score in this UI. Okay, so let me show that to you. So let's hit this play button at the top, and you gonna able to see this current score, or this text will also change according to current score. So as you can see, basically we just increasing our current score. We can see this current score in the UI, but the problem is that it's in decimal places. So we just want to convert into a float, whole float numbers like 1 2 3 4 integer. We don't want any decimal places. So what we have to do, which we're gonna go to, basically this will be decimal, but we don't want to show any decimal numbers. We just want to show a whole numbers like 1 2 3 4 like that. So we're gonna go to script, and we just have to type in to string. We're gonna put in quotation 0, and it will do the thing. Okay, we don't need to do anything. So this is score text dot text, basically this UI will be a flow whole number like 1 2 3 4, but decimal will be shown by over here in current score, but it will not show gonna show decimal number in the UI. In the UI it will be a whole number. Okay, so make sure you just control S and move to Unity. So we should able to see that score text. Okay, this text will be a whole number. Okay, so let's do that. So let's hit this play button in the top, and let's check that out. Okay, so just wait for the compile. So as you can see, just whole number just getting pop up or increasing in the UI. Okay, and the decimal play numbers are just showing in our inspector in current score, and it's not showing at all in the UI. So that's the thing we just need to understand. Basically you just have to put in quotation 0 once you convert this float into a string. Make sure in brackets you just put in quotation 0. It will just show up the whole numbers. Okay, as you can see right over here. So I hope you get the idea, and I'm gonna unplay this now, and you can make a variable for this amount. Okay, by going to top of your class, and you can adjust this number to how much you can make it 100, so the score will keep increasing so much fast. It's totally up to you how much you want. You can make a variable for that. I'm not gonna do anything like that. I'm gonna leave it with it. Okay, so it's totally up to you what you want. So once the game is over, basically once we collide with this uh, blocks or obstacle, what we want, we just want to stop increasing our score. Okay, so we also need to deal with that as well. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how you can show basically make score and show that up in UI. Okay, asset firstly project tab, then assets. So we want to create a script, something like game manager, which will control the game is really active or not. Okay, once we collide with these blocks, we want our game to be stopped. Basically we want our score just rising and rising. We just want to stop that. So basically we're gonna create a script which will check if the game is really active or not. So once we collide with this block, then we will set that game active parameter to false, something like that. So to do so, let's go to project tab, then assets, then script. Okay, or right click on assets, then create. So script, name it to something like game manager. So I already have it in my script folder, as you can see right over here, and you can attach this script to any game object of your hierarchy, or I'm gonna create a separate game object for this game manager as well. Okay, so let's go to hierarchy, right click, then create empty game object. Let's call this game object to something like game manager. Okay, game manager, sorry, this will be game manager. And let's select that script and drag it to add component section of this game object. And let's go to transform and reset the transform. I'm going to drag this game manager game object top of my hierarchy so I can see all the time. Okay, and now let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio. As you can see, we have by default start and update function. Let's remove this, we don't need it. Also these two namespaces in the top, let's get rid of that. Instead we're gonna create a parameter, so it can be true or false. Basically we will create a bool parameter which will check the game is really active or not. Okay, so let's make it public so we can set this parameter through another class. So that's why we just made it public. Okay, that will be bool, so it can be true or false, and we have to name the parameter. Let's say something like is game active. Okay, and by default I'm gonna give it a true value and close that up with semicolon. So by default the game will be true. Okay, once we start the game or play the game will be true. And once we collide with those blocks, what we want this is game active parameter to false. Okay, once we collide with those blocks. Okay, so make sure you just control S, and let's go to player script now where we colliding. So we're gonna go to collision function. As you can see, once we collide with this block, what we're doing, firstly we just basically stop moving our player. Okay, and after that what we want to set that is game active parameter to be false. Okay, because we collided with those blocks, so we're gonna use this find object of type. Okay, and make this arrows, and into arrows you have to put, basically pass the script name. So in our case this game manager, so let's pass game manager and make this first bracket. And in there we created a is game active parameter which can be true or false. So let's access that dot is game active parameter. Okay, and we're gonna set it to false. Why? Because we collided with those blocks, so we're gonna set it equal to false. Sorry, set it equal to false and close that up with semicolon. Okay, so once we collide with those blocks, so firstly what we're doing, we just move speed, we just setting it to 0. Okay, so basically stop moving our player, and after that we just going to game manager, find object of type, and the type of the object is game manager, basically a script. So basically we just moving over to this game manager script, then accessing this is game active parameter, and we setting this is game active parameter to false. As you can see, is game active parameter equal to false. Okay, so control S to save your code, and now let's move to Unity. So in game manager script, underneath our game manager script, and field will appear which says is game active. Okay, and by default it's gonna be checked, basically true. And once we collide with this block, we're gonna we're gonna able to see is game active parameter will be unchecked, basically false. Okay, because we collided with these blocks and we want our game to be stopped. So let's hit this play button in the top and let's check that out. Okay, so let's check that out. So if we collide with this any, so as you can see, indeed is game active parameter getting false, basically unchecked. And the score, as you can see, it just rising and rising, and it just going on. So we also want to stop this. Okay, because the game is no more longer active, so we want to stop this. So I'm gonna unplay this. Let's go open up the score manager script where we just increasing our score. So let's open that up. Let's go to score manager game object, and let's double click that script to open up in Visual Studio. So as you can see right over here, we just adding current score by this amount every single frame. So before we add score to our current score some amount, we need to check if the game is really active or not. Okay, and we do know once we collide with those blocks, we setting is game active parameter to false. So we need to check. So let's before we add, we're gonna check. So we have to type if and make first bracket and some curly brackets. Okay, so we're gonna check right over here. So find object of type, really sorry for noise is just coming out. Okay, so find object of type. So into arrows, find object of type, and the type of the object is script. So we're gonna pass game manager. So we're gonna go to that and make some brackets, first bracket and dot. We're gonna access the is game active parameter, and we're gonna check if it's equals to false. Okay, and make first bracket. So basically we firstly moving over to this game manager script. Okay, basically this game manager, and we checking if this is game active parameter is false. Okay, so if we go to score manager, as you can see, so if a dot is game active parameter is equals to false, basically the game is no longer active. So what we want to stop doing this thing, basically adding score. So we're gonna type return. Okay, type return and make sure you close that off with semicolon. So after return, whatever line of code you write, it will not be executed. So this line of code will be stopped right there once this is game active parameter is equals to false. Basically we collide with those blocks, so the game is no longer active. So basically we typing return, and after return whatever line of code you write, it will not be execute. So this gonna stops right there. Okay, so control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. So we're gonna see that once the game manager is game active parameter in game manager script gets wall, this score gonna stop rising. Okay, so let's select this game manager. So by default is true. Let's hit this play button in the top, and once we collide with this block, we should able to see this gonna stop right there. Okay, just right after the colliding, right after colliding. So let's collide with any something like this one. So as you can see, it gets stop 49. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of basically this one. So what we want now, we have to create a UI, something like retry button or something like that, so we can retry and show up the high score, how much score we have done so far. Okay, so we also need to deal with this. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna move over to this canvas. Okay, so if you haven't created the canvas, just go over to hierarchy, hit this plus icon or right click, then go to UI and select this canvas. Okay, so I already have canvas right over here, so let's select that and F to focus on it. So this our canvas, and hold down alt so you can look around. So what we want now, we want to create two buttons. Okay, before we do that, we're gonna create a game object. Okay, for our something, right? We're gonna call that retry menu or something like that, or home menu or something, game over menu. That will be fine. Okay, so let's right click on this canvas, then create an empty game object, and let's call this game object something like game over menu. Okay, so let's call this one game over menu. Okay, and make sure you just go to rect transform, click right over here and hold down alt and select this bottom right one. Okay, so as you can see, it's get stretch or the size of the canvas, and if I try to scale down, okay, this gonna scale down this game over menu, as well as basically the game over menu will resize according to our screen size. Okay, we just select this canvas and we just stretch about the size of our canvas, basically to separate all of the logic. And so now I'm going to drag game over menu top of my canvas, and let's right click on this game over menu. Let's go to UI, and then what we're gonna do, we're gonna create two buttons. Okay, so let's go to legacy and then button. So first button will be this button will be retry, and let's select react tool right over here, hold down alt on your keyboard, so it will resize from center, and you can able to see in the game view right over here, as you can see. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make the color of this button something different. Okay, so let's select this button, go over to image component inspector, and let's choose another color, something like yellow, I guess. It's totally up to you what color you want. Okay, so something like this, I guess. Okay, so this seems pretty good, and once you are fine with the color, I'm gonna rename this button to something like retry button. So let's go to inspector, let's call this one retry, sorry, retry, retry, retry button. Okay, retry button. And what I'm gonna do, let's click all right over here and select this text, and let's increase the text size. So let's go to inspector, scroll down to the bottom, and let's make the font size something around 80. Okay, and font style, I'm gonna select I'm gonna leave it with normal. Okay, and let's call, instead of button, let's call this one retry, retry, something like that, retry. And let's go to bottom, and you can choose a color of this text. So I'm gonna choose something white. White is little bit we cannot able to see, so just choose a color you like, something like that. Okay, so I'm gonna go with black, dark black. Okay, and let's select this button one more time, hold down alt, so it will resize from center. So let's adjust it, and let's drag it something a little bit up. Okay, so this our retry button, I'm gonna move it something over here, and select this button, go over to inspector, and then click on right over here, just move over to rect transform, click right over here, hold down all, and let's select this top one. Okay, top one, and let's drag it down something around here, here, something like that. Okay, and so and now if I try to scale down my screen, as you can see, indeed the button just getting resized itself according to our screen size, and it just staying right over here all the time. So that is the reason selecting that. You can select top left corner, right corner, whatever, and it's gonna resize according to the screen size of your canvas, and it will just gonna stay whatever position you have chosen. Okay, and now what we're gonna do, we're gonna duplicate this button. So duplicate this button, something like that. You can make a home button. So I'm not gonna do that, instead I'm just gonna leave it with retry. I will have a video in video link in the description, how you can make a main menu, and something like that you can copy for game over menu. Okay, so it will be a good, so I will have a link, of video link in the description, you can go and check that out. So I'm gonna just gonna go with retry button, so I'm gonna move it something right over here, center of our canvas. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how you can do it. Okay, the game is over, I want this panel to be active. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm gonna go to canvas, then let's select this game over menu, and by default I'm gonna set this in active. Okay, something like this, as you can see. I can check, basically go over to inspector, and you can check this, basically you can set that game object active or inactive, basically check it or uncheck it. Okay, so once the game is over, I'm gonna check, by default I'm gonna uncheck this, basically I don't want that panel to be active. Once the game is over, then I'm gonna set this game over menu to be active. Okay, so in order to do that, let's go to game manager script, and let's open that up quickly. Okay, so not gonna do that, we're gonna move over to player game object where we colliding. Okay, so let's select this player game object, let's open up our player script. Okay, So what we need a reference of this game over menu game object. Then we can set this one to be active, inactive, depending upon if the game is really active or not. Okay, and by default I'm gonna uncheck basically inactive. So we need a reference of this game object. So let's go to script. Okay, and let's go to top of our class and let's make a public something like public okay, public game object, public game object, and this one will be game over menu. So let's call it game over menu. Okay, and let's close that up with semicolon and control S to save your code. And let's move to Unity now, and we should see an empty field just gonna appear underneath our player script says game over menu. Okay, so we need to drag there this game over menu. So just hold a little bit, I have to plug in. Okay, so we're gonna go to player game object, and as you can see game over menu and it says none, basically empty. So we're gonna select this game over menu and let's drag it right there. Now we have a reference or this game object. So let's go to script now one more time, and over here as you can see we colliding with that block. Firstly we just making our player stop and then just setting is game active to false. And after doing that, what we want to set that game over menu. So let's go to game over menu, then dot set active function we have to use, and in brackets it will take the value. So we're gonna set it to true, basically checked. Okay, so let's set it to true means checked. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Firstly basically what we doing, we just going over to this game over menu and we just setting this active, basically checked. Okay, so make sure you just press down Ctrl S to save your code. Now let's move to Unity. So we should able to see once the game is over, basically our player game object collide with this block, the game over menu will be active right away. So let's check that out. So let's hit this play button in the top and check what's really happening. Okay, let's wait a little bit, and once it's done let's check that out. So as you can see well, once we collide, as you can see retry just gets pop up, basically this game over menu gets active. So once we click on this retry button, we want our this level to reload one more time. Okay, to do so I'm gonna uncheck. So let's go to game over menu. In there I'm gonna check this one, and now for now, and let's go over to basically click right there. We created this retry button. So what we want to do, we want to if we click on this retry button, we want to reload this level one more time. Okay, to do so, if we go to select this button and go over to inspector, scroll down to the bottom, we can see on click. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to hit this plus icon and we need to drag a game object. Okay, in which game object we just want to implement a function for retry this button. Okay, so basically we can call that function right underneath our this retry button function. Okay, basically button. So we can call any function right over here. So let's make a function for reloading our game scene or the level. So let's go to game manager script and let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio. Let's create a function for reloading our game. So let's make a public, make sure you just making it public so we can call that function right underneath our button section on click. Okay, so that's why. And for function we have to type void, and let's call this function something like retry level. Okay, retry level, and make sure you just make first bracket and some curly brackets. Okay, and let's close that off with semicolon. And what we want, once we in this function we just want to reload that game scene. So before you do that, make sure you just go to top of your class and just include this namespace using unity engine. Okay, unity engine dot scene management. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Okay, so this namespace allow us to reload or to switch up to any other scene. If we just playing around with scenes or levels, we need to include this namespace in top of our class using unity engine dot scene management. So let's go to this retry level function now. To retry that level, okay, we have to use this scene manager. Okay, scene manager dot load scene, we have to use this function. Okay, scene manager dot load scene, and this function right over here will take the name of the scene or the build index of it. So how you can see that, you just have to go to unity editor. So let's go there. In the top left you can see file. Okay, so just click on there and then go over to build settings, click on this build setting. As you can see, and window just gets pop up build settings. Okay, so the name of the scene is our sample scene, so we just have to drag it, it's not in there. So let's go to project tab, then assets, then scene. We have the scene which is sample scene, so let's drag it right there. So the name of the scene is a sample scene, and you can see the build index of it in the right section, which is 0. So over here you can pass the name of the scene, which in our case level sample scene, or the build index of it. So instead of passing that, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna cut this. Let's go to script. I'm gonna do scene manager. Okay, so let's go to scene manager dot get active scene and make this first packet dot build index. Okay, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon. So basically what we're doing, so scene manager dot get active scene basically means which scene we are currently in. So we are currently in sample scene, and the sample scene build index as you've seen is 0. So just accessing the build index. So basically what scene or the what level we are in, so basically this referencing itself. So basically we just reloading that. Okay, which level we are currently in. So this build index will be 0. Okay, or the name of the scene. So basically we just reloading the scene we are currently in, or the level you can say. Okay, and make sure you just control S to save your code. Now let's move to unity, and what we have to do now, we need to go to this retry button. Okay, retry button. So let's select this retry button, and let's go to inspector, scroll down to the bottom, says on click. So hit this plus icon, and you need to drag the game object in which game object the script is sitting on, or the function we created. So in game manager, so let's drag it right there, and in game manager, so it says no function, so click right there, and we're gonna go to game manager script, and in there we created this retry level function as we can see. So let's select that. So once we click on this retry function, retry button, that function will call, and what that function is doing, it's just reloading the scene, which scene we are currently in, or the level. Okay, and I'm gonna uncheck this game over menu. By default I don't want to be active. So once we collide with this block, this game over menu just gonna get active. So by default I'm gonna uncheck basically inactive. So let's check that out. Let's hit this play button in the top, and we should hope that it's gonna work fine. Okay, so just wait for to compile, and if we collide with this basically any of this block, as you can see, retry or the game over menu just get pop up. So now if we click on this retry button, we should able to see we will reload the scene. As you can see, it's indeed get. And if we click on this retry button one more time, as you can see, the level just loaded up one more time. And if we click retry, and we can play our level. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how you can do it. And if you want to make basically want to save your data, basically how much score you just made, and if you want to save, okay, so you can check out a video. I have a link in the description on how you can save your player data or score you want to save. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of it, how you can make a simple 3D game. And basically we made this game to understand unity game engine and little bit our C# programming language. Okay, so this is one of my longest video. Okay, I already have created multiple videos which already crossed over 4 hours, I guess. Okay, so we made this one. This is the first time of making a complete 3D game. Okay, 3D, not 2D. Okay, and lastly, thanks for watching this complete tutorial. I hope you get the idea how you can make a simple game in Unity game engine with C# coding. Okay, and and see you again. Okay, so lastly, thanks for watching this video and goodbye.